Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really plunging into a whole stack of material around a pretty famous productivity idea that sounds honestly kind of weird. Eat that frog.
Yeah, it's from Brian Tracy's book, the one with the same name. Hugely popular. And we've got, bits from the book, reviews, even some of the visual stuff he uses.
Right, so a good mix. And our goal here, our mission is basically to pull out the really useful, actionable stuff, the core ideas to help you beat procrastination and, focus on what actually matters.
Because, let's be honest, eating a frog, it doesn't immediately sound like getting things done, does it? More like something you'd do on a dare.
Exactly. But the core idea, apparently, is that actually doing this frog eating, can become, they say, fun and exciting, which sounds like a stretch. So let's unpack it. First things first. What is this frog we're supposed to be eating?
Okay, so the frog, as Tracy defines it, it's your biggest, most important task. The one that's going to have the biggest positive impact on your work or your life.
Ah, okay. So the big one.
The big one. And almost by definition, it's usually the one you're most likely to put off doing, the one you dread.
Got it. The thing you avoid, but the thing that matters most. And there's a rule, isn't there? Something about multiple frogs.
The first rule, and yeah, it sounds a bit grim, if you have two frogs, you have to eat the ugliest one first.
Ugliest.
Meaning, if you have two really important tasks, tackle the bigger, harder, more important one first. Get it out of the way. The discipline is key here. Start immediately on that big one and stick with it until it's completely done before you touch anything else.
Wow, okay. So not just what it is, but hitting the hardest thing first. Counterintuitive, maybe, but before you can eat it, you need to know what it is, right? And when you're going to tackle it. Sounds like we need to talk about planning.
Oh, absolutely. Planning is huge in this system. The book describes it as bringing the future into the present so that you can do something about it now.
I like that framing.
Yeah. And it points out that just jumping into action without thinking things through first, that's a major source of problems. Wasted effort, mistakes.
Right. And isn't there a specific ratio mentioned? Like how much planning time pays off?
Yes. The 10-90 rule. It's pretty striking. The idea is that the first 10% of the time you spend planning something, just thinking it through, can save you up to 90% of the time it takes to actually do it.
90%, that's huge.
It is. Think about it. Spending maybe, 10 or 12 minutes planning out your day could save you as much as 2 hours later on. 2 hours of flailing around or fixing mistakes. It's an incredible return on just a little bit of upfront thinking.
Okay, 12 minutes to save 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely makes planning sound less like a chore and more like a strategic move.
Yeah.
So how do you actually do that planning? What's the structure?
Well, you need different views, different horizons. So you have your daily list, what needs doing in the next 24 hours. Ideally, you make that the night before.
The night before, okay.
Then you've got a weekly list, kind of always under construction. You add to it as things pop up. And then your longer term stuff, monthly goals, maybe annual goals. You pull things from those bigger lists onto your weekly and daily ones.
Makes sense. Keep it flowing down.
And a really simple but powerful thing, just ticking items off the list, physically checking them off. It gives you this visual proof of accomplishment. It feels good, and that feeling motivates you to keep going.
Yeah, that little dopamine hit of checking the box. I get that. What about the really big tasks, though? The massive projects that feel like giant frogs?
For those big ones, the method is list out every single step. Everything you need to do from the very beginning to the very end.
Every single one.
Yeah.
Sounds like a lot of work up front.
It can be, but remember the 10-90 rule. Then you organize that big list, you look at priority, what's most important, and sequence what has to happen before something else can. Lay it all out so you can see it.
Visually, okay.
And then the crucial part, the rule that people often break, work on one task, just one thing from that list at a time, and stick with it until it's completely 100% finished.
One thing at a time. That sounds so simple, but yeah, when you're looking at a huge list, the urge to juggle is strong.
It really is. And to help figure out that priority part you mentioned, there's a specific technique called the ABCDE method.
Ah, yes, ABCDE. I've heard of this one.
It's pretty effective for daily prioritizing. The main idea is, thing on paper. List everything you have to do for the day before you start doing any of it. Then you assign one of those letters to each item, A, B, C, D, or E.
Okay, let's break those down. What's A?
A tasks are your frogs. Your absolute must-do items, things where there are serious negative consequences if you don't do them. Think like a critical project deadline, a major report for your boss, something vital for a client.
Serious consequences, got it.
B. B tasks are things you should do. There are consequences if you don't, but they're mild. Maybe someone's a bit inconvenienced or something gets slightly delayed, but it's not a disaster like missing an A. Returning a non-urgent call, responding to certain emails.
Okay, A is must, B is should, makes sense. C.
C, tasks are the nice-to-do things. Stuff that would be good to do, but honestly, there are no real consequences if you just don't do them at all.
Like what?
Oh, maybe calling a friend for a chat during work hours, tidying up your desk for the 5th time, reading some general industry news that isn't directly related to a project. They can feel productive, but they don't really move the needle on your key results.
Right. Feel-good tasks, maybe. Okay, A, B, C with D.
D is for delegate. Simple enough. If it's a task that someone else could do, get it off your plate. Delegate everything you possibly can to free up your own time for those A tasks only you can do.
Pass the frog. Or at least pass the smaller tadpoles.
Exactly. And finally, E is for eliminate. These are things you can just stop doing altogether. They make no real difference. Maybe it's a report nobody reads or a meeting you attend out of habit. Just eliminate them.
Got the dead weight. Okay, so you've got your list marked A1, A2, B1, C1, etc. What's the absolute crucial rule for working through it?
The non-negotiable rule is this. You never work on a B task if you have an A task still undone. Never touch a C if there's a B waiting, and so on down the line.
Never.
Never. You only work on an E task, which you should probably just eliminate anyway if literally every single A, B, C, and D task is finished. Which, let's be honest, almost never happens in a real workday.
Wow, that's strict.
It is, but it forces focus. The more thought you put into using this method, the source argues, the more you ensure you're consistently working on your highest value stuff. You get more important things done faster.
That discipline. It really ties back to that 1090 planning idea. Time spent deciding what to do is incredibly valuable. Which leads us nicely into the next big idea, focusing on what really matters, which connects to the famous 80-20 rule.
Right, the Pareto principle, Wilfredo Pareto, the economist. Yeah. Applied here, it basically says that 20% of your activities will generate 80% of your results.
20% gives 80%.
Exactly. Or, put it another way in a work context, maybe 20% of the specific tasks you do account for 80% of the total value you contribute.
And how did that link back to the frogs we were talking about?
Well, those high-value tasks, the ones in that critical 20% that deliver 80% of the results, they are almost always the hardest, most complex, most daunting tasks. They are your frogs.
Ah, okay, so the frogs live in that vital 20%.
Precisely. And a single one of those A tasks, one frog, can sometimes be worth more in terms of actual value generated than all the other B, C, D, and E tasks put together.
That really puts it in perspective.
It does, and here's the tough part, the source points out. Most people naturally procrastinate on that vital top 10 or 20%, the frogs. Instead, they fill their day with the easy stuff, the trivial many, that bottom 80% that contributes very little.
They're busy, but not necessarily productive.
Exactly. Mistaking activity for accomplishment. It's a super common trap. You feel like you're working hard, but you're not making progress on the things that truly matter.
They definitely hit home. I think a lot of us fall into that. So what's the antidote?
The advice is pretty blunt. You have to absolutely refuse to work on tasks from that bottom 80% while you still have critical tasks from the top 20% waiting.
Easier said than done. Feels so good to just clear off those little nagging things first. Get some quick wins.
It does feel good, and that's the trap. Clearing the small stuff first becomes a habit, and it's a hard one to break. Because those small, low-value tasks, they never end. They seem to multiply. You'll never clear the decks enough to get to the big stuff if you start there.
So resist the urge.
Resist the urge. The rule is, start with the frog. The hardest part of any important task, usually, is just getting started. Once you actually begin, build a little momentum, it often gets easier.
Okay, so we get what the frog is. We know planning and prioritizing, like A, B, C, D, E, helps us find it. And the 80-20 rule tells us why we need to focus on it. But how do you actually make yourself do it? Especially when you really, really don't want to. This sounds like it boils down to self-discipline, habits.
It absolutely does. Habits are fundamental. The source emphasizes that the habit of setting priorities, overcoming procrastination, getting started on your important tasks, it's a skill, a mental skill, even a physical one in some ways.
Not something you're just born with.
No, definitely not. Like any skill, you learn it through practice. Repetition, the old line about getting to Carnegie Hall, practice, man, practice. Your mind, your willpower, it's like a muscle. The more you exercise it by forcing yourself to focus and be disciplined, the stronger it gets.
Okay, so it's buildable. The source mentions something called the 3 Ds for forming new habits.
Right. Decision, discipline, and determination.
Okay. First, Make a clear decision. Decide exactly what you're going to do, maybe when and how. Be specific. Second, apply discipline. That's the forcing function. Make yourself do it whether you feel like it or not, especially at the beginning. Keep doing it until it starts to feel more automatic.
And the third D?
Determination. That's about persistence. Sticking with it even when it's hard, even when you slip up. You keep practicing until that habit is logged in, until doing the important task becomes easier than not doing it.
Easier than not doing it. That's an interesting thought. And the source really hammers home the idea of finishing tasks too, right? Not just starting them.
Oh, hugely important. There's a massive psychological benefit to completing things. The more you get into the habit of starting and finishing important jobs, the more momentum you build. It becomes self-reinforcing.
So once you've planned, prioritized, know your A1 task.
Yeah.
What's the key?
Launch immediately. Just start. Do the very first action, whatever it is, however small. Don't wait for the perfect moment or until you feel inspired. Just begin.
Like ripping off a Band-Aid. Kind of. And don't get paralyzed by perfectionism. There's a suggestion, a sort of personal rule. Get it 80% right and then correct it later.
Oh, I like that. Good enough is often good enough to get started.
Exactly. Be prepared that you might not get it perfect the first time. You might stumble. That's okay. That's part of learning and doing anything significant. The core message is just action, consistent action. These principles, they work fast and predictably when you actually apply them.
It all feels a bit more motivating, though, when you're clear on why you're doing these tasks, why this particular frog matters. The source asks a pretty direct question, doesn't it? Something like, why am I on the payroll?
Yeah, it's a stark question, but really important. Having clarity on the results you're expected to produce is vital. For your performance, obviously, but also for things like your pay, promotions, even just job satisfaction. You need to know what good looks like.
And that ties into identifying your key result areas, or KRAs.
Exactly. Those are the things you absolutely must do well to be considered successful in your job or role. What are the handful of outputs or responsibilities that really define your contribution?
And how do you figure those out? And maybe, more importantly, how do you spot where you might be falling short?
Well, one way is to ask yourself, if I could only do one thing all day long, what single activity would contribute the most value? Ask that a few times, maybe from different angles, value to the company, value to your career, etc. That helps clarify the KRAs.
Okay.
Then, within those key areas, you have to be honest about your strengths and weaknesses. The source suggests a simple self-grading exercise. Rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 in your most important life and work areas, career, finances, family, health, specific job skills. Where are the lower scores?
And there's a harsh truth about those low scores, isn't there? A rule about the weakest area.
Yeah, it's pretty blunt. The rule is your weakest key result area sets the ceiling on how effectively you can use all your other skills and abilities.
Ouch. Like the weakest link in a chain.
Exactly like that. You could be brilliant at 9 out of 10 things, but if you're really poor at that one critical KRA, it will hold back your overall performance and success.
And that feeling of weakness in an area that often leads straight back to procrastination, right?
Precisely. It's human nature. We tend to avoid things we're not good at, or things where we've failed or performed poorly in the past. We lack confidence, so we put off the task.
Avoid the discomfort.
Right. But the flip side is incredibly powerful. If you identify a weak KRA and actively work to improve your skill in that specific area, as you get better, your confidence grows. As your confidence grows, you become more motivated to do those tasks. Procrastination melts away. You might literally be just one skill away from a major breakthrough in performance.
That's a hopeful thought, which leads to what the source calls the great question.
Yeah, this is a question to ask yourself regularly. What one skill, if I developed and did it in an excellent fashion, would have the greatest positive impact on my career? Or life? You could broaden it.
How do you find the answer?
Look inward first. Be honest with yourself. But also be brave. Ask your boss. Ask trusted colleagues. Ask friends, family. Get feedback. Whatever that skill is, once you identify it, you need to make a concrete plan to get better at it. Take a course, read books, find a mentor, practice deliberately.
So continuous learning is key.
Absolutely essential. Knowledge and skills get outdated so quickly now. Getting better at your key tasks isn't just about being more effective. It actually saves you time in the long run because you do things faster and with fewer errors. And crucially, it boosts your motivation. Feeling inadequate is a major reason for procrastination.
So figure out what matters, KRAs, find the weak link, actively improve that skill. Got it. Beyond skills, though, what about other roadblocks? Things that just seem to get in the way. The source talks about identifying constraints.
Right. The idea is that between where you are now and any significant goal you want to achieve, there's usually one major bottleneck, one primary constraint that's holding you back or slowing you down.
The limiting factor.
Exactly. What sets the speed of your progress? Identifying that choke point, that single biggest obstacle, is incredibly valuable.
And the advice is to focus all your energy there.
Pretty much. Once you've pinpointed the main constraint, pouring your energy into alleviating that specific bottleneck is often the single most productive thing you can do with your time.
Okay, find the bottleneck, attack the bottleneck.
And the 80-20 rule pops up again here. The source suggests that about 80% of the constraints holding you back are likely internal.
Internal, meaning inside me.
Yeah. Within you, your habits, your skills, your mindset, maybe your lack of clarity, or internal to your organization, inefficient processes, lack of resources. Only about 20% of constraints are typically truly external: the market, competitors, things genuinely outside your control.
So when something's blocking progress, the first place to look is probably in the mirror, or at least within your own sphere of influence.
That's the mindset of successful people, according to the source. They instinctively look inward first. They ask, okay, what is it in me or in my approach or in my company that's creating this problem? They take responsibility for finding a way through it.
And it's an ongoing thing, right? Solve one constraint.
And another one will likely appear as the new bottleneck. It's a continuous process of identifying and alleviating, but tackling that key constraint. That can be the most important frog you need to eat at any given time.
Let's talk about a constraint, or maybe a source of many constraints, that affects pretty much everyone now. Technology, distractions.
Ah, yes. The wonderful servant that can so easily become a terrible master. This is a big focus. The constant lure, the attraction of distraction, especially from our devices, emails, notifications, it's highlighted as a major cause of scattered attention and ultimately underachievement.
And it digs into the why a bit too, the brain science, the dopamine loop.
Right. Every time you check your email, get a notification, see a new message, you get a tiny little hit of dopamine, a small pleasure buzz. It feels good momentarily. This conditions you to react immediately, pulling your focus away from whatever important thing you were doing.
It becomes addictive.
It can, yeah. An addiction to checking, to novelty, to responsiveness. And over time, this constant switching dramatically shortens your effective attention span.
And this whole idea of multitasking that technology seems to enable, the force calls it an illusion.
A total illusion. Research is very clear. You can only consciously focus on one complex cognitive task at a time. What feels like multitasking is actually rapid task switching, and every time you switch, there's a cost.
How much of a cost?
The source mentions studies suggesting it can take something like 17 minutes to fully refocus on your original task after a significant interruption, especially like checking email or the web. 17 minutes.
Wow. Multiply that by how many times we get pinged or check our phone in a day.
Yeah.
It's a scary amount of lost focus time.
It really is. It makes people feel incredibly busy, constantly reacting, but they accomplish less meaningful work, and they tend to make more mistakes because their focus is fragmented.
Okay, so it's a real problem. What are the practical solutions offered? How do we fight back?
The advice is pretty direct, and yeah, it takes discipline. First, big one, don't check email first thing in the morning.
Ooh, that's a tough one for many people.
It is. But starting your day reacting to your inbox means you're immediately letting other people set your agenda. If you must check it, do it quickly, get in, deal with anything truly urgent, get out.
And notifications.
Turn them off. Sounds, vibrations, pop-ups. Disable as many as you possibly can. A really powerful strategy suggested is to schedule specific times to check email, say, only twice a day, maybe 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. And the rest of the time, keep it closed.
What about emergencies? People worry they'll miss something vital.
Provide a specific emergency contact method, like a phone number, for the few people who might genuinely need to reach you urgently. For everyone else, email can wait a few hours.
Build digital fences.
Exactly. Create deliberate zones of silence. Block out periods in your day, maybe an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon where all devices are off or silenced, dedicated purely to focused work on your most important tasks, your frogs.
The source has a great line about that.
Yeah. You will be amazed at what happens. Nothing. The world usually doesn't end if you're unavailable for an hour. Segment your communication too. Give key people, like family or your direct boss, a special channel. Maybe filter important emails automatically into a read first folder. The goal is to build what the source calls a castle of concentration.
Castle of concentration. I like that. Protect your focus.
Exactly, and only let the important stuff, the true A tasks or critical communications inside the walls. Be proactive with your calendar too. Don't just automatically accept every meeting invite. Question if it's necessary. And, crucially, schedule large blocks of time for your own important work, treating them like appointments you cannot miss.
Book time with yourself or your frogs.
Yes, and leverage technology for you, not against you. Use digital to-do list apps. They make prioritizing easier, you can track progress, sometimes delegate tasks, and crucially, they can provide relentless reminders for your most important items.
Though the source does acknowledge that some people fear learning new tech.
It does, but it encourages pushing past that. Everything is learnable. Used wisely, these tools can help you regain control, which is key to managing your focus and even your stress levels about work.
Okay, so we've identified the frog, planned, prioritized, checked our skills, tackled constraints, built our castle of concentration. But what about those tasks that are just massive, huge projects that feel completely overwhelming just to look at?
Yeah, those giant frogs can be paralyzing. That's where a couple of specific techniques come in handy. The salami slice method and the Swiss cheese method.
Salami slice. Sounds tasty, at least. How does it work?
Think about eating a big salami. You don't try to swallow it whole, right? You slice it thinly. So for a huge task, you break it down into every single small step, just like we discussed for project planning. Then you commit to doing just one small slice at a time.
Ah, like the eating an elephant one bite at a time idea.
Exactly that principle. Just focus on completing that one tiny slice, that one next action. Don't worry about the whole giant sausage, just the slice in front of you.
Okay, makes sense. Break it down really small. What about Swiss cheese?
Swiss cheese is a bit different. Instead of completing one whole slice, you poke holes in the big task. You commit to working on some part of it, any part, for just a very short, defined period, maybe only 5 or 10 minutes.
Just 5 minutes. What can you get done?
Maybe not much, but that's not the main point. The point is to break the inertia, to get started. By doing just a little bit, you make the task feel less solid, less intimidating. You've poked some holes in it. It creates momentum and makes it easier to come back to later.
So it's about lowering the barrier to entry, just getting some traction.
Precisely. Getting started, even in a tiny way, and completing those small bits, whether it's a slice or a whole, builds motivation. The example given is authors who commit to just one page a day, or even one paragraph. It adds up. You can also use this for tasks you really dislike, like maybe scheduling just 30 minutes specifically for making cold calls. It contains the unpleasantness.
Break it down. Make it less scary. Build momentum. Seems vital. But underpinning all these tactics and techniques, there seems to be a strong emphasis on your mental state, your attitude.
Oh, completely foundational. The source really stresses that your feelings, your emotions about work and challenges are largely determined by how you talk to yourself, your internal dialogue. It's less about what actually happens and more about how you interpret what happens.
So controlling your reaction.
And choosing your reaction. To really succeed with this, you need to cultivate the mindset of what's called a complete optimist. Not in a naive way, but as an active choice. Choosing to respond positively to situations, refusing to let setbacks or difficulties completely derail your mood or your progress.
There's that Viktor Frankl quote again.
The last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude. It's about taking ownership of your internal state. This includes consciously deciding not to waste energy complaining about problems or blaming others.
So what does being an optimist look like in practice? What are the behaviors?
Well, based on the research mentioned, optimists actively look for the good in situations, even difficult ones. They ask, what can I learn from this? They see setbacks not as dead ends, but as opportunities for growth. They focus their energy on finding solutions, not dwelling on the problem or who's at fault.
Future focused versus past focused.
Exactly. They think and talk more about their goals, about where they're going, the future, rather than getting stuck on problems or mistakes, the past.
And controlling that inner voice seems like a constant practice.
It really is. You need to actively manage your self-talk. Feed yourself positive affirmations. Things like, I like myself, I can do it, I feel terrific. Repeating these, even if you don't fully believe them at first, can genuinely boost your self-esteem and confidence over time.
Fake it till you make it. A little bit.
In a constructive way, yes. And just the act of thinking about starting and especially finishing an important task becomes a motivator. Knowing the satisfaction you'll feel upon completion. The time spent might be the same as on some trivial task, but the payoff, the sense of accomplishment, the pride is massively different and reinforces the positive loop.
Okay, so all these elements, the planning, the prioritizing with A, B, C, D, E, the 80-20 focus, the salami slicing, managing distractions, building skills, cultivating that optimistic mindset, they all seem to lead up to one final key practice: single handling.
Yes, this is presented as kind of the culmination, the ultimate key to really high performance. It's your ability to select your most important task, your number one frog for the moment, start it, and then concentrate on it single-mindedly. No distractions, no switching until it is 100% complete.
One thing, laser focus.
That's the ideal. The idea is that when you work nonstop on a single important task, you move up something called the efficiency curve. You actually get more high-quality work done in less time because you build mental momentum. Every time you stop or switch tasks, you break that cycle and have to climb back up the curve.
And that intense, nonstop focus, that sounds like the state people call flow.
That's exactly the connection made. Single handling is the pathway to achieving that state of flow, which is described as maybe the highest human state of productivity and performance.
What's it feel like?
When you're in flow, time seems to distort. The work feels almost effortless. You feel focused, accurate, energized, clear-headed, even happy. Insights just seem to come to you. Your intuition guides you.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
How do you actually trigger that? Especially when you're facing a really tough frog.
One of the main triggers suggested is deliberately cultivating a sense of urgency, an inner drive, a feeling that you want to get this done and get it done quickly, almost like you're racing against yourself.
Create internal pressure.
A positive pressure, yeah. A bias for action. You prioritize doing, overthinking, planning once the initial plan is made, or talking about it.
And there are mantras for this.
Yeah, simple ones. To overcome that initial inertia, just repeat to yourself, do it now, do it now, do it now, get yourself moving. And if you feel your focus wandering later or you get tempted by a distraction, repeat. Back to work. Back to work. Pull yourself back to the main task.
Simple, but potentially effective. And this dedication, this single handling of important tasks, the source suggests it does more than just get work done. It actually shapes who you are.
It does. The argument is that by consistently choosing your most valuable task, focusing on it intensely, and pushing it through to completion, you build this powerful sense of personal mastery and effectiveness. You literally shape your character. You feel stronger, more competent, more capable. You start to believe you can achieve pretty much any goal you set. It creates this positive feedback loop, an ascending spiral of personal effectiveness.
An ascending spiral of personal effectiveness. Wow, that's a compelling image to finish on. We have covered a lot today in this deep dive.
We really have, from finding your biggest, ugliest frog,
to planning the attack with things like the ABCDE method.
Understanding why that 80-20 focus on the vital few is so crucial.
Slicing up those monster tasks with salami and Swiss cheese.
Building that castle of concentration against distractions.
Cultivating optimism and improving those key skills holding you back.
It really does all come back to taking consistent, focused action on your highest value tasks, eating those frogs.
Absolutely. So as you listening reflect on all this, maybe look at your own to-do list. Think about that law of constraints we discussed. The idea that 80% of what holds us back is probably internal. Here's a final thought to consider. What's maybe just one internal constraint for you? Could be a habit, a skill gap, maybe a limiting belief that if you focus your energy on alleviating just that one thing, starting today, what would have the greatest positive impact on your own ability to finally eat that frog?
Thank you for listening. If you found value in this audio, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful content on motivation, habits, and wealth building. New audiobooks and summaries are uploaded every week, so stay tuned and keep growing. This is Neural Wealth, where your mindset meets your future. Until next time, stay focused, stay hungry, and stay inspired.